Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, we're going to be talking about the art of taking responsibility to create lasting relationships. And I've got a lovely expert here today. Her name is Sophie Personne, and her title is that she is a relationship and dating expert. So welcome, Sophie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So then, the actual art of taking responsibility to creating lasting relationships, it's a big subject, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But it's actually quite close to my heart because a lot of people wonder why things aren't going their way or why, it's not happening for them. And the truth of the matter is they are not taking responsibility.
Yeah, and I think quite often it's all too easy, isn't it, to point the finger at our partner and say, it's them, it's them, it's them.
I think, as you say, it's a massive subject. So where do you start? There's so many things. For starters, even if you have a person who is left, even if you have a person who didn't have a clue what's going to happen, you still played a role in that. And people still need to understand that, yes, it's horrible and all the rest of it. But it's self-reflection, self-awareness. What happened? What contributed to this relationship not working? What could you have done differently? And it's not about beating yourself up. It's not about, why do I always do things wrong? It's not like that. It's just either there was a behavior that didn't work with the partner. So is the problem the behavior, or is the problem the kind of partner you were with? Is it that you need someone who's completely different? So, as I say, it's about self-reflection and actually asking yourself the difficult questions. But most people just want it gone. They put it in that box, they lock it with chains and padlocks and stuff, and then he comes back seeping out in the middle of the night when you're driving your car, and you try to close that box back down. But until you've actually opened it and faced up to what's inside, you're never, ever going to get better or have better relationships for that matter.
No, and it's so true that we sometimes either repeatedly go into different relationships and then get the same experiences because we've not learnt the lessons from previous relationships, or like you say, we keep taking the same baggage with us and mindset into our next relationships, aren't we?
And I think, so if I give you an example of mine, so when I was much younger, I can't really explain where that came from. I think it was more the job I had at the time. I was an area manager in the security industry. So that's quite a male-dominated environment. And if you were a woman, you were probably working in admin or HR, not in operations. And I suppose that came from wanting to prove I was as good as, or I'm not sure. But I projected a very strong image, which is fine. I think I still do project that. But what I wasn't projecting was the fact that actually there is a little soft marshmallow center in this. And I mean, I used to be called the dragon because, you could tease me for a while and then, it would explode sort of thing. But in that dragon, there was still a soft way in. And the problem was that whoever I was with, the moment I showed that vulnerability, they were gone because I was picking people that actually wanted the support all of the time. So by being a fixer, all I was getting was needy people. And actually, I like fixing, but I need help too sometimes. I don't want to always be the one carrying everyone. So in terms of relationship, that in time changed. But I know that with what I'm doing as a job now, that element is still there. And I have to be very, very aware of it, even with friends, that they're not taking all the time sort of thing. And that sounds a little bit nasty and selfish if a friend was to listen and think, oh, that's not fair, I'll do a lot for her too. It's not like that. It's in subtle ways that sometimes you can just give too much of yourself. And I know that for me, it brings resentment. It brings all sorts of negative emotions that could have a lasting impact on that friendship. Would I not be aware that it's happening? And that's the thing. It's the awareness that comes with it. And it's taking responsibility for the behavior, because I'm obviously portraying something that they feel they can take, if you know
Yes.
what I mean.
I had a similar experience where I was in a relationship where I felt like I was doing all the giving, and I thought I was being the bigger person by being forgiving of any unacceptable behavior, whereas actually all I was doing was not having strong enough, firm enough boundaries. And therefore, like you say, resentment set in then, don't you? And you feel like, I deserve better than this, whatever that this is in the relationship. And you're just on a hiding to nothing if you don't accept that you're playing some sort of part in the result you're getting.
Yeah, but people don't like to hear that. People really don't like to hear that. And even more so in the controversial cheating side of things. Because, it's always the person who cheats that is seen as the bad one. And don't get me wrong, I'm not condemning that. I'm not condemning cheating in any way, shape, or form. But the other person will have played a role.
Yeah, and usually that's around trust, isn't it? Distrusting.
It's around trust. It's around, have they changed the behavior with their partner? Why did that person feel the need to go elsewhere? And I think also, you don't just wake up one day, well, some people do, but the majority of people don't just wake up one day and think, oh, I know, I'm going to go and find myself a bit on the side. They don't. It's a gradual process. And then because they're not happy, something will happen. And there's that little bit of opportunity that wouldn't be there if needs were satisfied at home, so to speak.
I think that's down to quite often if it's the man that's done the cheating. And I'm not saying that women don't, but they obviously do. But I know that if in a relationship when I'm talking to a woman who I mainly deal with as clients, the man is doing the cheating, usually it's around the man not feeling appreciated within the home environment that happens.
Yeah, and that's where they're taking responsibility, but also communication, because it's very easy to just let things slip. And really, it's the little things. All these little things are happening that seem irrelevant, they're not important. Just sweep it under the carpet, we move on from that. And all of these little things build up, and then the carpet's touching the ceiling because, you can't hide them anymore. But they've become massive things at that point. I mean, I had a customer years ago, and the reason why she came to me wasn't to do with relationship whatsoever. She was wondering whether she needed to stop her business and go back to being employed. But after unraveling everything, what transpired was that actually she felt unsupported by her husband. And they had both set up on their own. They had both, spent a lot of time looking after family, grandkids, parents, excuse me. Sorry. And as a result, they knew each other. They'd been together 35 years, so they knew each other inside out. They knew how each other liked their toast, how to make the tea. They knew where to put the slippers or where they'd find the slippers or whatever, you know what I mean? But what they've forgotten is to talk, and they were going in very different directions. So in a way, she came at the right time. The wanting to give up the business was more a symptom of something else than it was giving up the business. And because of that, we're still together today. But it's very easy to let life interrupt you. And, we deal with that tomorrow. But tomorrow is like 10 years' time now.
Yes. Yeah. And I think quite often, especially from the woman's point of view, we check out of our relationships probably 1 or 2 years before we actually and emotionally grieve for that relationship before we actually end it. So by the time that point comes where, the guy's aware that something needs fixing, she's done.
And this goes back to communication. So what happens is something triggers something, an unhealthy response, shall we say, and it disables me. I think, right, I need to have a conversation with him, but there is no point because he's going to say A, B, C, D, E. So it's not his problem, it's mine. I'll sort it out by myself. And that is the beginning of the end, because we're now working solo, completely on our own, not making the other person aware there's an issue whatsoever, because we assume we know what we're going to say. And this little thing becomes bigger because now we're really resenting it, and we're adding to it and adding to it. And by the time 5 years later we say, sorry, I'm done, the other person's like, you what? I didn't realise there was a problem.
Yeah. And like you say, communication is key. And we're not saying that any one person is responsible for starting that process, but it's about creating that awareness in our relationships, isn't it? And probably educating kids about how to have healthy relationships to start with, which we were never taught in schools, are we, or by our parents?
But I think the other thing as well is constructive conversation. Now, I think it was about a year ago, a friend of mine sent me some WhatsApp messages, and basically it was a rant about her husband, and it went on and on and on, and it's written, and I'm just going through, and I'm like, I'm bored. This is white noise. This is nagging. So I'm bored, and I'm not even part of it. And I'm thinking the poor guy must be thinking all the time, oh, she's going on again. And it's just me, don't listen to me. And I'm like, well, I'm not surprised. To be fair, I didn't listen either. I didn't read the whole thing because I got bored halfway through. So I can imagine, I feel his pain, to be fair. And she was, oh, that's not very nice. Which side are you on? I said, well, actually, I'm on yours, because by telling you this, I'm trying to help you. So then I sent her to some videos and stuff to learn how to communicate properly, which is basically make sure the other person feels heard first, and then take them into consideration into how you're feeling. Because, it seems to be, especially with Gen Z, that, oh, that's the way I feel. And that's the end of a conversation. Well, I'm delighted that's the way you feel, but that's not gaining anything. That's not helping your partner. That's not helping your relationship. The way you feel, the way they feel, needs to be acknowledged, and something comes in the middle. Not just that's the end of it, because that's how I feel and it's wrong.
Yeah.
Where'd you go with that?
There's a very wise saying that to be understood, first we must understand. And the first thing is to understand our partner and ask questions around, what they think initially.
I think another point that's dodgy is when babies are born. Because the mother, I mean, I haven't got kids. I'm not really able to, so such is life. But what I've seen is, so a baby is born. The mother will look after the poor thing that's just born, can't feed itself, can't do anything by itself. The husband feels at the bottom of the list. And women who've just had a child, or 2 or 3, will say, oh, it's like I've got 4 kids. Because, he's not helping me. But it's because he's feeling rejected and at the bottom of the list. Now, the woman thinks she's at the bottom of the list because she's having to help all of these people. And what about me? And unless this is spoken about, it, again, is the seed for something to happen over time.
And I think also because men and women have, genetically different brains, and the way we think, the way we behave is totally different from each other. We tend to think that, our spouse thinks and feels and behaves the same as another woman would in a relationship, and that's not the case. And so it's learning how men think and feel and behave is different to what we do. And quite often I think men feel that they're not going to be appreciated to offer to help, because men generally are fixers. They feel they can fix things in for themselves, so they don't think to offer to help like another woman would, because they think you've got it handled unless you say you need help.
But I think even so a friend of mine, I was always thought she was probably bisexual, but she'd never been with a woman, and then went on to meet a woman, and I'm probably gay. But even so woman and woman, there was still massive discrepancies, because whether you're the same gender or not, you're still going to be different, aren't you? You're going to react different to different things because of life experience and, your own perceptions, your own upbringing, and all of these things. And we just kind of take for granted that the other person should know us and should understand us. But what are we doing to know them and understand them? Like, not what we want to see, not how we want them to react as if they were another woman or whatever, how they truly are. And I think, especially at the beginning of a relationship, that's even worse to a degree, because people really have got the pink fluffy glasses on and they just see what they want to see.
Absolutely. But I think it's not necessarily about gender, it's about energy. And I think even in gay relationships, we attract the polar opposite. So even woman to woman in a relationship, you'll find that one's got the natural core energy that's the more dominant masculine, and one's got the natural core energy that's the more feminine, even though they're the same gender. So again, it's the differences between the energies more than the genders. That's the thing that sort of can create the different mindsets and behaviors that we're not familiar with, because we only know what's familiar for us, in terms of our own energy.
But this is where, spending a bit of time reflecting on who we are and how we've gained some of our beliefs. Beliefs are a thing that, when you're 8 years old, you would like put your life on the fact that Father Christmas exists. You're just like adamant. That is gospel truth. I mean, obviously at 12, 15, you definitely know that actually that wasn't quite the case. But we look at that, well, yeah, that's obvious, isn't it? But we don't look at it for our own beliefs at all. We don't challenge our beliefs, but we need to. I mean, for instance, I was using this example with a customer, and as I was using it, I realised I actually still had the belief, despite the fact that I had identified that, something was amiss. And the belief was that if you eat chocolate, you're going to get spots. And when I was 8 years old, long story short, but my auntie got me a bar of chocolate and said, don't share with anybody, you eat it by yourself. And I said, I can't, because I get spots. And she was a psychologist and she was NLP trained. And she said, what makes you think that? And so my mum told me, and it's true, because I used to have a lot of acne as a child. And she said, I want you to go and eat this bar of chocolate, and I want you to savor every bit of it. And every time you're chewing on it, I wanted to say that you're not going to get spots the next day. So I did that. I ate all the chocolate, and the next morning she was right. Not a single spot inside. And as I was sharing this example, I realised that actually, I recognised that was a belief and blah, blah, blah. But still wouldn't eat a bar of chocolate for that reason. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So by the time I was 37, I'm 45 now. And I was just like, so actually, despite the fact I knew that, I've still for years carried on with it.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, the impact a comment can have from a parent, a family member, a sibling, or a teacher at school that can have a lifelong impact. I know for me, as a child in primary school, I got told by a teacher that I couldn't sing because she auditioned us, for like the school play, or I don't know whether it's a nativity thing or whatever, I can't remember. But she auditioned us all, and she either put you in the grunters group or the singing group. And I was the only girl in the grunters group. And in the grunters group, you had to learn a musical instrument to play instead.
Yeah.
And I carried that forward, and I never sang in assemblies or any church services I went to thereafter. I just mouthed the words because I labelled myself as not being able to sing.
And obviously these things, singing, chocolate, that's not, inverted brackets, major stuff. But when you start looking at beliefs around relationships and whether we're worthy of this or that, or, all of the stuff around it, that's when it gets frightening, because that's when we start to make wrong choices as well.
Especially if we've got the belief that, all men are cheaters, for example, because if we're going into any relationship with that strong belief that, just because of previous relationships, that might have been an issue, and then thinking that, it applies to all men, then obviously quite often that's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy just on the energy you're projecting and your behaviors you're projecting around that you don't might not even be aware of,
because you're expecting it to happen. So you will kind of you need to be reassured that what you believe is true, so you're kind of going to make it happen, aren't you?
Quite often, if you have a strong belief, our mind wants to be proved right, so we'll keep, I suppose, testing a partner to the point where eventually you are proved right. right.
As you
And they're
say,
pushed into
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing, how often that is the case, and we don't even realize that, the energy and the thoughts and behaviors we have and the around beliefs can affect our outcomes. And it's a case of we don't know what we don't know until we do, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think for me, the one thing is to just stop and look at ourselves. I think there's an easy time to do it, which is around New Year. But I still think that it should be done more often than that. I try and challenge myself at least once a month, because I don't think you can grow unless you do that. And let's be realistic, there's no staying put. Even water doesn't stay put. If it's stagnant, it will still reduce because you get mouldy. If there's movement, it won't get mouldy. And it's the same sort of thing. If you regularly challenge yourself, you're more likely to open yourself up to new opportunities, new people, new things, because you have self-awareness. And I'll find self-awareness it's a hard one, because some people think they're self-aware, but they're really not. They have no idea how they're perceived. I'm very aware that something that's happened from being a child, when I walk in a room, often half the room does not particularly like me and the other half does. I don't know why. I don't even need to speak. I was having this conversation with a customer this morning, actually, because she's experiencing the same sort of thing. It must be a presence thing. I'm not sure, whatever it is. So I have a self-awareness. So I'm aware it might happen. And then I've got to really read the cues as to, like, right, this person does not like you. Even if you like them, there's no point wasting your time on them, because they're not going to want to talk to you for very long, and they're going to give you a bad vibe, and it's not going to make you feel particularly good. So don't waste your time, sort of thing. But there is a guy I know, and we were having a conversation just a couple of days ago about self-awareness, and he's someone who's quite opinionated. Opinionated, is that the right term?
Yes.
And he didn't realise that, which I find quite amazing, because most people describe him as that. And yet he's someone who reads a lot, educated, that, does reflect, and yet he didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have described himself as being opinionated then?
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how other people, like you say, perceive us, and we're not even conscious of that energy that we're exuding, or that, that's their awareness of who you are.
Yeah, completely. And, like, for instance, in his case, it's just that he's passionate about certain things. So that's the way he sees it. Oh, but I'm just passionate about A, B, C, or D. And I'm like, yeah, but that can come across a different way to certain people.
Yeah, based on the energy we're exuding with that passion.
And the choice of word that we use, language is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Words have power massively. So around the subject, the art of taking responsibility to create lasting relationships, if you've got somebody coming to you that is very much finger pointing, to the past relationships, or the current relationship as them being the issue and problem, what do you say to them initially?
I don't, is the truth. They need to get it out, is the first thing. They really need to get it out, because until it's completely vented, there is no point attempting anything, because they won't hear it anyway. So what I find is that saying something to someone like that, or about that, has less impact than getting them to realise it by themselves. So that is normally the route that I'll take. I will challenge through various question techniques and stuff to lead them to make that realization themselves.
Exactly. And I think that's an example of being a great coach, is actually being able to ask the right questions so that people come to their own realizations for themselves and come to their own answers for themselves. So well done for that, Sophie.
Oh, thank you.
So in terms of your best contact information, Sophie, what's the best way people can get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Just Google Sophie Personne and you'll find me one way or another.
That's a nice, easy one. Thank you for that. And
that's all right.
Any other contact information, I think the listeners know by now, we put in the show notes, so we will do that. Final words then around the art of taking responsibility to create lasting relationships. Sophie, any final words of wisdom?
Just do it. Don't just read another book or listen to yet another podcast or video after you listen to this one. Just sit down and reflect and look at the patterns in your own behaviours. Look at the patterns in the people you attract. Just look at the patterns in your own life. Is it you? Probably. What is it that you're doing, not doing? What can you do? Just create some sort of self-awareness about your weak point and your strong point. Your weak point don't mean that you're weak. They just mean they can be tweaked. And they can be tweaked in ways that will change your life. And also your weak points, for instance, one of mine is I'm very stubborn. And that's not great, but that makes me very resilient. So your weak points are not necessarily weak. They are strengths in their own rights at the right time. And the other thing I'd say is learn to be vulnerable, because the more vulnerable you are, the less you have to hide. And the less you have to hide, the more authentic you are. The more authentic you are, the more people aligned with you, you will attract.
100% agree. Although, just to clarify, we're not suggesting people be vulnerable in relationships where there's a lot of toxicity or violence.
No, obviously not. And there's a time and a place. Don't just go and be vulnerable in front of your boss, for instance, on certain matters. Yeah, it's okay to be open, but, there's a time and a place for certain things.
Absolutely. So it's a place of vulnerability from, inner self-love and strength, not from a place of labeling yourself as a victim in a toxic or unhealthy relationship.
Yeah. I mean, some people often say to me, but if I'm really me, people are not going to like me. And I'm like, no, I think they like you more. And if it doesn't, they're not the right people to have in your life anyway. So what have you got to lose by being your true self?
Love that. Yeah, well done. That's a fabulous piece of wisdom to end the episode on. So thank you so much, Sophie, for sharing your thoughts, your insights, and your examples around the art of taking responsibility to create lasting relationships.
Well, thank you for having me.
So it just leaves me to say that true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.